This may seem like a rather esoteric question, but which version of the US yield curve does a better job of forecasting economic growth? The public sector yield curve or the private sector yield curve? The reason why this question suddenly seems important is that the two yield curves are pointing in different directions. After having inverted over the course of the summer, the public sector yield curve is now flipped back positive. Short-term interest rates like 3-month T-bills are now trading below 10-year treasuries. And that's generally considered to be a good sign for the US economy, since a steep or at least not inverted yield curve sends at least somewhat of a positive signal. By contrast, the private sector yield curve, which is measured by the difference between 10-year swaps and, say, 3-month LIBOR, still remains inverted, as it has now for several months, so sending a rather negative signal about the future of the US economy. So to answer this question, we took a correlation between US GDP and the shape of the yield curve over the past 20 years and examined both the public sector and private sector yield curves. And here's what we found. We found that the private sector yield curve actually does a much better job of forecasting future US economic growth than does the public sector yield curve. If you look at the correlation between yield curve shape and future GDP growth for the private sector, it turns positive after just 2 quarters, so about 6 months, and it becomes very positive after about 2 years. So it becomes a very powerful indicator of where the economy will be going in, say, 1.5 to 2 years' time. By contrast, the public sector yield curve is actually not a very good indicator of where the economy is going in the short term. And it doesn't even flip positive in terms of its correlation with future growth until 4 quarters, or about 1 full year in advance. After that, it does become a more useful indicator. Certainly by 18 months or 24 months in the future, it's become a strong indicator of future US economic growth. But the fact that the US private sector yield curve remains inverted may not send a very strong signal for what the economy will do in, say, the next 3 to 6 months. But as we move towards the end of 2020 or especially into 2021, it's sending a signal that the US economy may be set for a slowdown. I'm Eric Norland, Senior Economist at the CME Group in London.